In a small, bustling town surrounded by rolling hills and endless fields, there lived a quiet girl named Lily. Her life was simple but filled with love, despite the challenges her family faced daily. Lily's father worked as the school janitor, sweeping floors, fixing broken chairs, and ensuring the classrooms were clean for students every morning. Though his job didn't pay much, he took pride in it because it allowed him to provide for his daughter. They lived in a modest apartment just a few blocks away from the school, a place that always smelled faintly of polish and old books. Lily was different from most kids her age. While other children played outside or spent hours glued to their screens, she loved spending time at the school after hours. She'd wander through empty hallways, peeking into classrooms where teachers left behind stacks of papers, colorful posters on walls, and sometimes even musical instruments. One particular item caught her attention more than anything else: a violin tucked away in a dusty corner of the music room. It looked delicate yet mysterious, like something out of a storybook. Though Lily had never touched a violin before, she often imagined what it would feel like to hold one, to draw the bow across its strings and create music so beautiful it could make people cry. But such dreams felt impossible for someone like her. Instruments like violins were expensive, and lessons cost money her family simply didn't have. Still, the idea lingered in her mind, growing stronger each day. One afternoon, during a school-wide assembly, the topic turned to music. The principal invited the school's music teacher to demonstrate various instruments, hoping to spark interest among the students. As the teacher played snippets of songs on the piano, guitar, and flute, Lily sat quietly in the back row, captivated. When the teacher finally picked up a violin, the sound filled the auditorium, rich, warm, and hauntingly beautiful. Lily leaned forward, her heart racing. She wanted nothing more than to try it herself. After the performance, the music teacher asked if anyone wanted to volunteer to give the violin a shot. Most students giggled nervously or shook their heads, but Lily raised her hand timidly. Some of the teachers exchanged amused glances. They thought it was funny that the janitor's daughter would dare to dream so big. One of them joked aloud, "Why not let her try? Maybe she'll surprise us all." The comment drew laughter from the crowd, though Lily didn't hear it. All she heard was the word "try," and that was enough. When handed the violin, Lily held it awkwardly, unsure of how to position it against her shoulder. The bow felt foreign in her hands, and when she attempted to play, the result was a harsh, grating noise that made everyone wince. Laughter erupted around her, but instead of feeling embarrassed, Lily smiled softly. For the first time, she had touched an instrument she'd only dreamed about. That moment planted a seed in her heart, a determination to prove that she wasn't just the janitor's daughter. She was someone capable of greatness, even if no one believed it yet. Little did anyone know, this seemingly insignificant event would change everything, for Lily, for her family, and for the entire school. What started as a joke would soon become a story no one would forget. As Lily's fame grew within the school, so did the tension around her. While many students and teachers celebrated her talent, others found it difficult to accept her rise. Some resented the attention she was receiving, believing that someone from her background didn't deserve such recognition. "She's just the janitor's daughter," one teacher muttered during a staff meeting. "Her playing is good, but does she really belong in the spotlight?" Others argued that her success was merely a fluke, a product of sympathy rather than skill. These whispers reached Lily's ears, planting seeds of doubt in her mind, despite her best efforts to stay focused. At home, Lily tried to brush off the negativity, but it wasn't easy. Her father noticed the change in her demeanor. One evening, as they sat together at their small kitchen table, he placed a gentle hand on hers. "You're doing something amazing, Lily," he said softly. "Don't let anyone take that away from you." His words brought tears to her eyes, but they also reminded her of why she had started playing the violin in the first place. It wasn't for applause or approval. It was because music made her feel alive. Still, the growing resentment at school weighed heavily on her. Things came to a head when Lily decided to audition for a prestigious youth orchestra program in the city. The program was known for nurturing exceptional young musicians, offering them opportunities to perform alongside professionals and attend master classes with world-renowned instructors. For Lily, it represented a chance to take her talent to the next level, to prove not only to herself, but to the doubters that she truly belonged among the best. However, applying wasn't easy. The application fee alone was steep, and traveling to the audition required money her family simply didn't have. Determined not to give up, Lily worked odd jobs after school to save every penny she could. She mowed lawns, babysat neighborhood kids, and even helped organize old books at the local library. Her father pitched in too, working extra hours at the school and skipping meals to stretch their budget further. Together, they scraped together enough to rent a bus ticket to the city for the audition day. On the morning of the audition, Lily carefully packed her battered violin into its worn case, kissed her father goodbye, and set off on the long journey ahead. The audition hall was intimidating. A grand room filled with polished instruments, sleek cases, and impeccably dressed students who exuded confidence. Many of them came from wealthy families, their violins gleaming under the bright lights. Compared to them, Lily felt out of place. Her plain clothes and scuffed shoes stood in stark contrast to the designer outfits around her. When she took her seat, some of the other participants glanced at her violin case with raised eyebrows, exchanging smirks as if silently agreeing that she didn't belong there. But Lily refused to let their judgment shake her resolve. When her turn came, she walked to the center of the stage, adjusted her violin, and began to play. The piece she chose was challenging, a fast-paced, intricate composition that demanded precision and emotion. As the first notes rang out, the skeptical expressions in the audience slowly softened. By the time she finished, the judges were leaning forward in their seats, visibly moved by her performance. Though she didn't know it yet, Lily had left an indelible mark on everyone present, not just with her technical skill, but with the raw passion she poured into every note. Back at school, news of her audition spread quickly, reigniting the divide between those who supported her and those who resented her. Some students accused her of wasting her time, insisting she'd never get accepted into such an elite program. Others claimed she was being given special treatment because of her background. But through it all, Lily remained steadfast. She knew the truth. She had earned every opportunity through sheer determination and hard work. And deep down, she believed that no amount of criticism could stop her from chasing her dreams, even if it meant facing more challenges along the way. Lily's journey with the violin began in the most humble of ways. After that fateful assembly, her father noticed how much she had been thinking about the instrument. Though money was tight, he couldn't bear to see his daughter give up on something that clearly meant so much to her. One evening, after finishing his shift at the school, he stopped by a small music shop tucked away in a quiet corner of town. The shopkeeper, an elderly man with kind eyes and a gentle smile, listened patiently as Lily's father explained their situation. He didn't have much to offer, but he hoped to rent an old violin for his daughter, even if it wasn't perfect. The shopkeeper rummaged through a pile of dusty cases until he found one that hadn't been touched in years. Inside lay a battered violin, its wood scratched and worn, its strings slightly frayed. It wasn't glamorous, but it still held a faint glimmer of potential. The shopkeeper agreed to let them take it home for a fraction of the usual cost, knowing how important it was for dreams like Lily's to have a chance to grow. That night, when Lily opened the case, her eyes lit up with wonder. To her, it wasn't just an old, broken instrument. It was a treasure, a gateway to a world she had only imagined. Every evening after school, while other kids played outside or watched TV, Lily practiced tirelessly. Their tiny apartment became her stage, and the screeching sounds of her early attempts echoed through the thin walls. At first, the noise sounded more like cats fighting than actual music, but Lily didn't care. She poured her heart into every note, determined to make the violin sing. Her father sat nearby, mending shoes or reading a book, always offering words of encouragement whenever frustration threatened to overwhelm her. "You're doing great," he'd say with a proud smile. "Just keep going." Weeks turned into months, and slowly something incredible began to happen. The harsh, jarring notes started blending together into melodies, simple ones at first, then more complex tunes. Lily discovered that she had a natural ear for music, able to pick out harmonies and rhythms almost instinctively. She spent hours watching videos online, teaching herself techniques and practicing finger placements late into the night. Her fingers ached and calluses formed on her fingertips, but she refused to stop. Each improvement fueled her determination even more. One day, as she played a soft, lilting melody in the hallway of her school, a group of teachers passing by stopped in their tracks. They exchanged surprised glances, unable to believe what they were hearing. The same girl who had once produced ear-splitting screeches was now creating music so beautiful it seemed to float through the air. One teacher whispered, "Is that really Lily?" Another shook her head in disbelief. "I can't believe it." Word spread quickly among the staff and students about the janitor's daughter, who could play the violin. Some remained skeptical, convinced it must be beginner's luck or exaggeration. But when Lily performed during a school recital a few weeks later, there was no denying her talent. As she stood nervously on stage, holding her worn violin, the room fell silent. When she began to play Vivaldi's Spring, the audience was spellbound. The delicate notes danced across the auditorium, filling the space with warmth and emotion. By the time she finished, tears glistened in the eyes of many, including some of the very teachers who had once laughed at her. For Lily, this moment was transformative. For the first time, she felt seen, not as the janitor's daughter, but as someone extraordinary. People clapped and cheered, calling her name as she bowed shyly. Yet, amidst the applause, she couldn't help but notice a few faces in the crowd that looked uneasy, almost guilty. Those expressions hinted at the challenges yet to come. But for now, Lily allowed herself to bask in the joy of knowing she had proven something, not just to others, but to herself. Her dream was real, and nothing could take that away from her. As news of Lily's newfound talent spread through the school, reactions were mixed. While some students and teachers marveled at her skill, others struggled to accept that someone like her, someone from such humble beginnings, could achieve something so remarkable. Whispers followed her in the hallways, and not all of them were kind. She got lucky. One student muttered under their breath during lunch. Another sneered, "It's just a phase. She'll mess up eventually." Even a few teachers joined in, questioning whether her success was genuine or if she had somehow cheated her way into sounding good. At first, Lily tried to ignore the negativity. She reminded herself why she played the violin, not for praise or recognition, but because it made her happy. Still, the constant doubt wore on her. Every time someone smirked or rolled their eyes when she walked by, it felt like a weight pressing down on her chest. But instead of letting it break her spirit, Lily used it as fuel. If people didn't believe in her, she would work twice as hard to prove them wrong. Late at night, when the world was quiet and her father slept soundly in the next room, she practiced until her fingers ached and her arms felt too heavy to lift. The turning point came during a special assembly planned by the school. The principal decided to host an event showcasing student talents, and Lily was invited to perform. Some whispered that she only got the invitation because the administration wanted to avoid looking bad after mocking her earlier. Others thought she'd crumble under pressure, proving their doubts right. On the day of the performance, nerves tightened Lily's stomach into knots. As she stood backstage, clutching her battered violin, she could hear the murmurs of the audience beyond the curtain. "Do you think she's really that good?" one voice asked. "We'll see soon enough," another replied with a tone of skepticism. When Lily finally stepped onto the stage, the auditorium fell silent. She took a deep breath, adjusted her grip on the violin, and began to play. This time, she chose a piece that was close to her heart. Amazing Grace. The melody flowed effortlessly from her bow, each note resonating with clarity and emotion. It wasn't flashy or complicated. It didn't need to be. The simplicity of the song allowed her passion to shine through, touching everyone who listened. Halfway through, she closed her eyes, letting the music carry her away. For those few minutes, nothing else mattered. The doubters, the whispers, the challenges, they all faded into the background. By the time she finished, the room was completely still. Then, as if waking from a trance, the audience erupted into applause. People clapped so loudly that the sound echoed off the walls, filling the space with energy. Teachers who had once dismissed her sat frozen in their seats, stunned by what they had just witnessed. Students who had teased her now stared in awe, their faces painted with disbelief. Even the harshest critics couldn't deny the power of her performance. But perhaps the most surprising reaction came from Mrs. Harper, the same teacher who had joked about letting Lily try the violin during the earlier assembly. As tears welled up in her eyes, Mrs. Harper stood up and led the standing ovation, clapping harder than anyone else. Her guilt was evident, though she didn't say a word. For Lily, seeing this moment of redemption meant more than any applause. It showed her that even those who doubted her could change their minds, and that forgiveness was possible. Afterward, students crowded around her, eager to congratulate her and ask questions about how she learned to play so beautifully. Some even admitted they had been wrong about her. Though Lily appreciated their words, she stayed grounded, knowing that the journey ahead wouldn't always be easy. Fame within the school brought both admiration and envy, and not everyone was ready to celebrate her success. But for now, she allowed herself to enjoy the victory, knowing she had earned every bit of it. That day, Lily proved that talent has no boundaries, and that sometimes all it takes is courage and determination to silence even the loudest skeptics. Years passed, and Lily's name became synonymous with excellence in the world of music. From performing on grand stages across the globe to collaborating with renowned orchestras, she achieved dreams that once seemed impossible. Her battered violin, now lovingly restored by a master craftsman, accompanied her everywhere, a symbol of her journey from humble beginnings to international acclaim. Yet despite her success, Lily never forgot where she came from. The small town, the worn hallways of her old school, and the faces of those who had doubted her remained etched in her memory, not as scars, but as reminders of how far she had come. Every chance she got, Lily returned to her hometown. She didn't do it for fame or recognition. She did it because she wanted to give back. In the same auditorium where she had once been mocked, she now hosted free music workshops for children from low-income families. "If I can do it," she often told them, "so can you." Her message was simple yet powerful. Talent knows no boundaries, and potential can be found in the most unexpected places. She encouraged kids to dream big, showing them that even something as seemingly out of reach as a violin could become theirs with hard work and determination. One summer, Lily organized a special event called Music for Everyone, inviting students from neighboring towns to participate in a week-long camp. With help from sponsors and donations, she provided instruments, sheet music, and lessons, all free of charge. Parents watched in awe as their children, many of whom had never held an instrument before, began to play melodies they never thought possible. For Lily, seeing the spark of excitement in their eyes was more rewarding than any standing ovation she had ever received. Back at her old school, teachers proudly shared Lily's story with new generations of students. Posters of her concerts hung in the hallways alongside banners celebrating her achievements. What had once been a source of mockery had transformed into a beacon of inspiration. Students whispered about her during lunch breaks, imagining what it must have been like to stand on stage beside her. Some even started practicing instruments themselves, hoping to follow in her footsteps. But perhaps the most profound change occurred within the adults who had underestimated her. Mrs. Harper, the teacher who had joked about letting Lily try the violin, became one of her biggest advocates. She incorporated Lily's story into her lessons, using it as a reminder to always see the potential in every child. Other teachers followed suit, vowing to create opportunities rather than barriers for their students. The school itself underwent subtle transformations. Music programs expanded, scholarships were introduced, and efforts were made to ensure no student felt left behind. Lily's father remained her greatest supporter, attending every performance he could. Though his hands were weathered from years of hard work, they clapped the loudest whenever she took the stage. He often told her, "You've done more than make us proud. You've shown people what's possible when you believe." His words echoed in her heart, reminding her that her journey wasn't just about personal success. It was about breaking cycles, challenging stereotypes, and opening doors for others. As the years went on, Lily's legacy continued to grow. She wrote a memoir detailing her struggles and triumphs, hoping to inspire readers around the world. Schools invited her to speak at graduations and assemblies, eager to share her story with young minds hungry for motivation. Journalists hailed her as proof that greatness isn't defined by wealth or privilege, but by resilience and passion. Yet through it all, Lily stayed grounded, always remembering the girl who had dared to pick up a violin despite the odds. In the end, Lily's story became more than just hers. It belonged to everyone who had ever been told they weren't good enough. It served as a testament to the power of belief, both in oneself and in others. And though she traveled the world, filling concert halls with her music, her true masterpiece lay in the lives she touched along the way. Because sometimes the most beautiful symphonies aren't played on strings or keys. They are written in hearts and minds, inspiring generations to dream bigger, reach higher, and never stop believing in the impossible. Life in the youth orchestra was both exhilarating and grueling for Lily. Every rehearsal pushed her to her limits, demanding a level of precision and dedication she had never experienced before. The other musicians were exceptionally talented, each one bringing years of training and resources that Lily could only dream of. At first, she often felt like an outsider, someone who didn't quite fit in with the polished, privileged world of classical music. But Lily refused to let self-doubt take root. Instead, she channeled her energy into practice, arriving early to rehearsals and staying late to perfect even the smallest details of her playing. The conductor, Mr. Alden, was known for his strictness and high expectations. He rarely handed out compliments, preferring to focus on what needed improvement. For Lily, this meant constant feedback, sometimes harsh, but always constructive. During one particularly difficult session, the group struggled to synchronize a complex passage. Frustrated, Mr. Alden stopped the music abruptly and turned to Lily. "You," he said, pointing at her, "play it alone." Her heart raced as all eyes shifted in her direction. Taking a deep breath, she raised her violin and began to play. The notes flowed smoothly, her bow gliding across the strings with confidence. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before Mr. Alden nodded approvingly. "That's how it should sound," he told the group. From that day on, Lily earned not just his respect, but also the admiration of her peers. Despite these victories, not everyone welcomed her presence. Some members of the orchestra continued to resent her, believing she didn't deserve to be there. One girl, Clara, openly criticized her during breaks, questioning how someone without formal training could keep up with the rest of them. "It's not fair," Clara muttered to her friends one afternoon. She got lucky. Though Lily overheard the comment, she chose not to respond. Instead, she worked harder, determined to prove that her place in the orchestra wasn't luck. It was earned through sheer grit and determination. Her perseverance paid off when the orchestra prepared for its first major performance, a concert at a renowned city hall. The program included a challenging piece that required every musician to perform at their peak. As rehearsals intensified, so did the pressure. One evening, after hours of practicing the same section repeatedly, Lily felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. She wanted nothing more than to give up, to retreat back to the safety of her small town where life seemed simpler. But then she remembered her father's words, "Don't let anyone take this away from you." With renewed resolve, she wiped her tears and picked up her violin once more. On the night of the concert, The grand hall buzzed with anticipation. Families, friends, and music lovers filled the seats, eager to hear the young talents of the orchestra. Backstage, nerves ran high. Lily sat quietly in a corner, tuning her violin and running through mental exercises to calm herself. When her name was called for the final lineup, she took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The spotlight hit her, warm and blinding, but she focused on the familiar weight of her violin against her shoulder. As the conductor raised his baton, the room fell silent. When it was her turn to solo, Lily closed her eyes and let the music guide her. Each note soared through the hall, resonating deeply with the audience. By the time she finished, the crowd erupted into applause, rising to their feet in a standing ovation. Among them sat her father, beaming with pride as tears streamed down his face. Even Clara, who had once doubted her, clapped enthusiastically, her expression softening with genuine admiration. That night marked a turning point for Lily. Not only had she proven herself to the orchestra and the audience, but she had also silenced her inner critic. She realized that talent wasn't about perfection or privilege. It was about passion, resilience, and the courage to keep going no matter how tough things got. As she stood on stage, bowing alongside her fellow musicians, she knew she had found her true home, not just in the world of music, but within herself. Word of Lily's success in the city quickly made its way back to her hometown. News traveled fast, especially in a small community where everyone seemed to know everyone else's business. Soon, teachers and students at her old school were buzzing about the janitor's daughter, who had risen to perform on some of the most prestigious stages in the region. Some felt proud, boasting that they had known her when she was just starting out. Others grew quiet, their earlier mockery now haunting them. It wasn't long before the principal received a call from the youth orchestra's director, asking if Lily would be willing to return to her former school for a special assembly. When the day arrived, Lily stepped off the bus carrying her violin case, the same battered one that had accompanied her through so many challenges. This time, however, she walked with confidence, her head held high. The once-worn instrument inside now gleamed slightly, thanks to hours of careful maintenance by a skilled luthier who had taken an interest in her story. As she entered the familiar halls of her old school, memories flooded back. The laughter, the whispers, the moments of doubt. But instead of feeling intimidated, Lily felt empowered. She was no longer the shy girl clutching a borrowed violin. She was someone who had fought tirelessly to prove herself, and won. The auditorium buzzed with excitement as students and teachers filed in for the assembly. When Lily took the stage, holding her violin in one hand and the microphone in the other, the room fell silent. For a moment, she simply stood there, taking in the faces of those who had shaped her journey, some with kindness, others with cruelty. Then, with a soft smile, she began to speak. "I'm not here today to talk about how far I've come," she said, her voice steady and clear. "I'm here to thank the people who helped me get here, even if they didn't realize it at the time." Her eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on Mrs. Harper, the teacher who had jokingly suggested she try the violin during that fateful assembly years ago. Though the comment had been meant as a jest, Lily chose to see it differently. "That moment changed my life," she continued. "It gave me a reason to believe in myself, even when others didn't." She went on to express gratitude for her father, whose unwavering support had kept her going through the toughest times. "He taught me that hard work and determination can overcome anything," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Turning to the audience, she acknowledged the doubters too, thanking them for pushing her to work harder. "If you hadn't questioned me, I might not have pushed myself as much as I did," she admitted. "So, in a way, you all played a part in this." Her speech moved many to tears, including some of her former critics. Mrs. Harper stood up, visibly emotional, and publicly apologized for her role in underestimating Lily. "We were wrong about you," she said, her voice trembling, "and we're so proud of everything you've achieved." Other teachers followed suit, offering heartfelt apologies and words of encouragement. Even some of the students who had teased her approached her after the assembly, admitting they had misjudged her and congratulating her on her success. After her speech, Lily performed a piece that had become symbolic of her journey, Amazing Grace. As the melody filled the auditorium, it carried with it a message of redemption and hope. For the teachers and students who had doubted her, it was a reminder of the power of belief, for better or worse. And for Lily, it was a celebration of how far she had come, not just as a musician, but as a person. By the end of the day, something remarkable had shifted within the school. Conversations turned toward nurturing potential rather than dismissing it. Teachers vowed to encourage every student, regardless of their background, while students pledged to support one another instead of tearing each other down. Lily's visit left a lasting impact, transforming the very place where her story had begun into a space of inspiration and possibility. As she boarded the bus to leave, Lily looked back at the school one last time. She knew she would never forget where she came from, or the people who had unknowingly shaped her path. But more importantly, she hoped they wouldn't forget either. Because sometimes, all it takes is believing in someone, even just a little, to change their entire world. The days following Lily's audition felt like an eternity. She returned to her routine, practicing late into the night and helping her father with his work at the school, all while waiting anxiously for news about the orchestra program. The wait was excruciating, especially since whispers of doubt continued to swirl around her. Some classmates snickered, saying she had no chance of getting in, while others simply ignored her altogether. But Lily refused to let their negativity seep into her heart. Instead, she poured every ounce of energy into perfecting her craft, determined to keep moving forward no matter what. One crisp morning, as sunlight streamed through the cracks in their apartment window, there was a knock at the door. Lily opened it to find a neatly folded letter resting on the doormat. Her hands trembled as she picked it up, recognizing the emblem of the youth orchestra printed on the envelope. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Her father, noticing her frozen stance, hurried over and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Open it," he said gently, his voice steady despite the nervous excitement in his eyes. With shaking fingers, Lily tore open the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. As she read the words, tears welled up in her eyes. She had been accepted, not only into the program but also as one of its youngest members. Overwhelmed with emotion, she turned to her father, who pulled her into a tight hug. They celebrated quietly that evening, sharing a simple meal under the dim light of their kitchen bowl. It wasn't much, but it was enough. For the first time in weeks, Lily allowed herself to feel truly happy, knowing that all her hard work had paid off. When she arrived at the city for her first rehearsal, however, reality hit hard. The other participants were nothing short of intimidating, polished, confident, and impeccably trained. Many came from families where music was a tradition, their parents having spent thousands on lessons, instruments, and competitions. Their violins gleamed under the studio lights, each one worth more than everything Lily owned combined. In contrast, her battered violin looked out of place, its scratches telling stories of struggle rather than privilege. At first, some of the other musicians treated her with thinly veiled disdain. Hearing breaks, they huddled together, whispering and casting judgmental glances her way. One boy even remarked loudly, "How did someone like her get in here?" Though his words stung, Lily chose not to respond. Instead, she focused on proving herself through her playing. Every note she drew from her violin carried the weight of her journey, the long nights, the sacrifices, and the relentless determination that had brought her this far. Her breakthrough came during a particularly challenging rehearsal. The conductor, a stern man known for his high standards, stopped the group mid-piece and pointed directly at Lily. "You," he said sharply, "stand up and play this section alone." A wave of panic washed over her, but she steadied herself, taking a deep breath before raising her violin. As she began to play, the room fell silent. Her tone was rich and expressive, capturing the essence of the piece with stunning clarity. When she finished, there was a pause. A moment so still it felt like time itself had stopped. Then the conductor nodded slowly, a flicker of approval crossing his face. "That's how it's done," he said firmly, turning back to the rest of the group. From that day forward, attitudes toward Lily began to shift. Her peers started approaching her after rehearsals, asking questions about her technique or complimenting her performances. Some even admitted they had underestimated her, apologizing for their earlier behavior. While not everyone warmed up to her immediately, Lily earned their respect through sheer talent and perseverance. Even the boy who had mocked her extended an awkward handshake, muttering, "You're really good." Though challenges remained, Lily found solace in the fact that she'd longed. Each rehearsal pushed her further, teaching her new skills and expanding her horizons. For the first time, she realized that her background wasn't a limitation. It was her strength. Every scratch on her violin, every callus on her fingers, and every sleepless night had shaped her into the musician she was becoming. And as she stood among her fellow musicians, bow poised and ready to play, she knew she had proven something invaluable. Greatness isn't defined by where you come from, but by the fire within you to rise above it all.